Hey, what's up? It's Justin with NRN, the No Bull Racing Network, and we just got done racing at Pocono. And you know what? I don't normally think of Pocono as a very exciting race. It's not one of my favorite ones on the calendar, but today's race at Pocono was actually pretty good. I really enjoyed it, so let's go ahead and dive into it and talk about this race. So the first thing I want to mention about this race was that it was kind of interesting because we got to see the season unfold real time. You had this ability to see who had the fastest car and who had what and who was strong and who wasn't. That's just the way Pocono is, with it being so big, so wide, all about momentum, all about speed. The cream really rose to the top, and there were three drivers that really stood out, with a fourth coming into play. And those three drivers, of course, you're probably already thinking about them, being Kevin Harvick, Kyle Busch, and Martin Truex Jr. But I tell you what, if you had to go ahead and select your top four right now, and I'm going to have to hold on to this piece of audio because I want to play this later in the season to see if I was accurate, but I think that top four could obviously be Kyle Busch, Martin Truex Jr., Kevin Harvick, and potentially Kyle Larson, because Kyle Larson continues to be the best Chevrolet. How many times have I said that this season already in these recaps that Kyle Larson has been the strongest Chevy? He just has. Each and every week, he's always up there. And when he's having a bad day, he rebounds and gets a good finish, which he, again today, he was competing with those top three cars in his Chevrolet. He even said after the race that he didn't feel like he had a car that was good enough to run top five, but he was able to do that, finishing fourth. So who knows? Do we see the four drivers racing one another today that we could see in Homestead? There's a chance that we might have. But anyway, in the first stage of the race, Ryan Blaney got off to a really good start. He would lead a couple of laps, but eventually Kevin Harvick would take over the lead, and he looked like he was going to run away with it, but Martin Truex Jr. would get around him towards the end of the first stage, and Martin Truex Jr. would pick up that first stage win. But for the rest of it, it was pretty clean and green. Joey Logano had some problems in that first stage, had some problems fueling that car, and that was going to cost him big. So he was running up front before that all happened. That was pretty much the first stage of the race there. Martin Truex Jr. picking up that win. Second stage, though, was all Kevin Harvick. The number four, it looks like it was like, okay, here we go. Kevin Harvick's running away with this one now. He put his car in victory lane. Again, it was pretty clean and green through that second stage as well, with Kevin Harvick picking up that win. And I actually, for a second there, thought it would be interesting if each of the three drivers picked up a stage win: Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, and Martin Truex Jr. And by the second stage, Martin Truex Jr. and Kevin Harvick were well on their way to accomplishing that. But when we got to the third stage, that's where things got a little more interesting. Started seeing some caution flag waves. Derek Cope would get spun around by Kyle Larson. He would spin him out at the entrance of pit road. That would bring out the caution. And very interesting, when they had a caution, I think it was for debris. I think there was a debris caution that came out, which is something we hadn't seen in a while this season. Martin Truex Jr. made the call to stay out. He and Kevin Harvick did not pit, and that right there proved to be the call of the race, because track position became more important than having those fresh tires. Guys like Kyle Busch came in for tires, and Ryan Blaney came in for tires, but it really didn't help him out all that much in the long run. It didn't really matter that Kyle Busch had fresher tires than Kevin Harvick and Martin Truex Jr. Now, Kevin Harvick did lose some places on that last restart, but Martin Truex Jr. was able to stay out ahead and grow that lead over Kyle Larson and Kevin Harvick at the end on those older tires. So track position proved to be critical. Big crash, though, for Denny Hamlin. Denny Hamlin would be involved in an accident. He would get to the inside of Bowman, I believe it was, and he would get loose and get into Bowman. And Bowman's back end would tap the wall, but Denny Hamlin would smack the inside wall pretty much face on, and that would be day done for Denny Hamlin. And then a little later on one of the restarts, Joey Logano pushing Eric Jones a little too aggressively, and Eric Jones would lose the car and he would crash. So we would restart the race with 7 laps to go. And Kyle Larson and Martin Truex Jr. put on a really good restart and a little show there. Martin Truex Jr. moved down to block Kyle Larson, and he would keep the lead, grow the lead out over Kyle Larson, and Martin Truex Jr. would win today at Pocono, picking up his second win of the season and solidifying himself as a championship contender with Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch. But I do believe this was the first week, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first week in the long time that I can remember that we had those three cars racing one another at the end. Because it seems like this season, maybe Martin Truex Jr. has a problem, maybe Kyle Busch has a problem, maybe Kevin Harvick has a problem, but never the three of them running together and racing one another at the end. To my knowledge, that's true. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it just seems like that hasn't happened yet this season. And we finally got to see that race between those top three, because those top three ran with one another all day long. The top three consistently was Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, Martin Truex Jr. And in fact, Martin Truex Jr. actually earlier in the race, I think it was around stage 2, had problems on that pit stop. The tire changer bumped into the jack man. The car, they weren't able to get I think it was the left rear tire on that car well enough. That cost them big. Had to restart like 15th or something like that. And he came all the way through the field today and was able to win the race. So Martin Truex Jr. is here to defend that championship of his. And he might just do it. But like I said, we might have looked at what the three drivers who could be competing for that championship in Homestead would be. So let's go ahead and take a look at the top 20 finishers from the Pocono 400. Again, Martin Truex Jr. is going to be your winner in a Toyota. Kyle Larson would finish second in his Chevrolet, highest of the Chevrolet runners, and normally is this year. Chip Ganassi still has the best handle on that Chevrolet. Kyle Busch would finish in third in his Toyota. Kevin Harvick would be fourth. Brad Keselowski would be fifth. Ryan Blaney, our pole sitter, would end up sixth. Eric Almirola with a really good run today. He would finish in seventh. Jimmy Johnson with another top 10 finish. And I tell you what, Hendrick continues to improve. And Jimmy Johnson would get an 8th place finish. Well needed for he and that team. Joey Logano, despite his problems, would battle back to another top 10 finish. He would finish 9th. And Chase Elliott would finish 10th. Paul Menard would be 11th. Good run for him. That car won the race here last year. Another strong run for that 21 Wood Brothers machine. Austin Dillon would finish in 12th. Matt Kenseth with a really strong run, finishing in 13th. And his teammate Roush at Roush Racing would finish 14th. That'd be Ricky Stenhouse Jr. But really impressive run for the 6 car. You know, Matt Kenseth was brought into that team to try to turn things around for them. And the 13th place finish is very strong for that number 6 car. Jamie McMurray would finish in 15th. I expected a little more out of him today after starting in 3rd. He would finish in 15th. David Reagan would be 16th. Chris Buescher would be 17th. The young William Byron in the number 24 car, he would finish in 18th. Kurt Busch had a pretty frustrating day. He would finish in 19th. And Clint Boyer would finish in 20th. That would be your top 20 finishers of the Pocono 400. But yes, again, Chevrolet starting to actually show some strength here a little bit. You know, the Ford started out dominating the first half of the season. The Toyotas have started coming around. Well, I say Toyotas, but I really only mean 2 Toyotas, because it's been Kyle Busch has been the only Toyota on the Joe Gibbs team that has run competitively. Denny Hamlin has had a couple of runs here and there, but he hasn't been the Denny Hamlin that we're used to seeing. And of course, Martin Truex Jr. is that other Toyota that's been strong. But the Chevys, you know, they've been nowhere to be seen. Kyle Larson has been getting the finishes for Chevrolet, but now we're starting to see some Chevys creep back up there. Good runs for them. Of course, Jimmy Johnson, like I said, finishes in 8th. Chase Elliott getting 10th. And Austin Dillon finishing 12th. So those Chevys are starting to creep their way back up there, but they still obviously have some work to do. As you go down the rest of the lineup, you see more Chevys back there than anything else. The Fords still strong, still pretty quick. You know, all those Fords running in the top 10 today: Kevin Harvick, Brad Keselowski, Ryan Blaney, Eric Almirola, and Joey Logano. But I tell you, the Chevys are starting to turn it around, and we still, we're 12 races. I cannot believe this. I cannot believe that we're 12 races away from the end of the season, the regular season coming. Only 12 more races before they get to that cutoff line, and there's still plenty of guys out there who could get some wins. We're definitely going to have some wild card drivers, because with only 3 drivers basically picking up all the wins this season, you know, Martin Truex Jr. has 2, Kevin Harvick has like 1 billion, Kyle Busch has 1 million, and then you've got Clint Boyer with 1, Austin Dillon with 1. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be plenty of wild card drivers out there, so you're going to have to get on them points. Points are going to be what's important this season, because I don't think you can get a win with these guys running like they are. I just don't know if you can do it. because I don't think we're done seeing Kevin Harvick and Kyle Busch and Martin Truex Jr. win the races. Next week, we're coming up to Michigan, which is where a track that Kyle Larson has always run well at. I think he's won the last 3 times there at Michigan, so maybe that will be Kyle Larson's big chance to get the win and solidify himself as one of the 4 drivers. Because right now, as I look at this, I think that there are the 4 drivers that I'd pick to see run in Homestead would be Martin Truex Jr., Kyle Busch, Kevin Harvick, and Kyle Larson. That right there, they seem to be the 4 guys that could get the job done. But we'll have to see. I mean, because anything can happen in the chase. I mean, anything can absolutely happen. I thought Kyle Larson was going to make it last year, and he blew an engine in the chase, and that costed him a shot at it. So you just never know what's going to happen. But Michigan will be next week. And speaking of Detroit, IMSA was racing in Detroit on the street circuit, along with the IndyCars. The IndyCar race still going on at the time of this recording, but IMSA was out there, and that was a pretty decent race. I watched that one yesterday. 100-minute race around that street circuit. You know, it's very difficult to pass out there, but I still thought it was a pretty solid race, especially up front with the prototypes there at the end. Felipe Nasser and Eric Curran. And the Whelen Engineering Racing prototype, they were able to pick up the win just a little bit over Acura Team Penske. Ricky Taylor and Elio Castroneves, the driver in that car, and finishing third. And the last car on the podium would be Dane Cameron and Juan Pablo Montoya in the other Acura Team Penske car. Those 2 cars, really strong, Team Penske. You know, since they got that win, they've really turned it around. There were a couple of races at the beginning of the season, you know, Daytona, Sebring, those kinds of places come to mind where Penske ran well in the beginning and then had problems. But now that Penske's got that win at Mid-Ohio, they're on it, man. And again, coming up just short of winning this race here in Detroit, but Felipe Nasser and Eric Curran playing the strategy perfectly in the Whelen Engineering Racing Cadillac, and Cadillac getting a win in Detroit, which you know they wanted. That was big for, the Motor City having Cadillac win the race. So I know they were pretty happy about that. And I was a little disappointed in Mazda Team Yost performance. They didn't perform like I expected. Finishing 9th, one of the cars, Oliver Jarvis. Expected a little more out of him and Nunez from finishing 9th, but weird strategy. Also finishing 6th, the Mustang Sampling Racing Cadillac, Felipe Albuquerque and Yoel Barbosa. I don't know if I like their call. They stayed out on one of the early caution flags and didn't come and get the tires when everybody else did. They had the track position there for a little bit, but when they came into pit, I don't think that was a really good call, and they would wind up finishing 6th. I do believe they are still the point leaders. Are they the point leaders? I don't know. I think they're still the point leaders in that one. But GTD was pretty exciting. That was good and quite unexpected to see. But Catherine Legg, I'm a big Catherine Legg fan. Have a crush on her. That's like one of my crushes. Is Catherine Legg, and she wound up winning the race yesterday, and I was really excited about that. Myers Shank Racing, and what's interesting about that team is that number 86 car that Catherine Legg is a part of, they don't have the funding to run all of the races. They weren't going to run all of the races. They were only going to run the endurance races where they were going to have multiple drivers on that team. And I tell you what, Catherine Legg yesterday, she said it best after she got out of the car for her stint. She says, I'm fighting for my job here. And that car actually is competing for the championship right now. They've had strong runs every time they've been out there, that number 86 car. And they're in the championship hunt. And she's in the championship hunt. She could win a championship. And at what point does Myers Shank Racing go to Acura and be like, do you really want to stop running this car? What's going to be critical? She's going to be in the race at Watkins Glen because that's one of the big endurance races that they were slotted to run in. And if they perform well there, I think Acura has to keep that 86 car in the hunt because right now they're the best at competing with Paul Miller Racing in his Lamborghini. And the Paul Miller Racing Lamborghini is leading the championship, I think, but not by much now that I think Catherine Legg is second, or she might be leading the championship. I don't know. I need to go and look at the championship standings of how things are stacking up right now. But Catherine Legg won the race last year in Detroit back when she was driving for Lexus. And then she comes back this season and she picks up that win with Farnbacher. Mario Farnbacher was the other driver for that team. The other Myers Shank Racing entry would finish right in 14th place overall, second in class. So both of the Meyer Shank racing cars getting a 1-2 finish. So good run from Michael Shank in that team. Madison Snow and Brian Sellers, as I said, the leading Lamborghini, would finish third and last on the podium. So that's how the IMSA race would wrap up. But again, next week we'll be going racing from Michigan once again. You know, all the car manufacturers are going to be paying attention to that one. And Kyle Larson, he might be a really good driver to watch there, because he's won there the last 3 times they've been, and he's yet to get a win, and he could put Chevy back in victory lane perhaps. I think he's strong. You know, Chip Ganassi, whatever Chip Ganassi's doing over there to that number 42 team, they have taken and embraced the Chevy package better than anyone else. But like I said, Hendrick is starting to slowly creep their way up the leaderboard each and every week, so who knows, maybe they can turn it around. Also finishing up this weekend, I did a recap on this yesterday, but just to let you know, if in case you missed that, SRL, our friends at SRL had their last race of the season. So before we go, I just wanted to mention this. Lewis Marshall picked up that win in Brazil over Rene Vanderstappen, and Sandro Dulis finishing in third place in his Ferrari. So it would be Mercedes, and Ferrari. And that wraps up the SRL Championship. But don't forget that next Saturday, SRL will be having a special Indy 500. And they've also got a website out now. You can go check their website out and read up on all there is about news and events happening in SRL. It's really nice looking little website here as I've been looking over it. So you can go check that out. You can check that out at srlracingleague.weebly.com. And you know what? I'll include a link below so that you can click on that and check out their website. Really nice website there. Very well done. Anyway, that's going to do it here for the recap. Going Michigan racing next week, so I'll see you for that. And don't forget, Le Mans is just a few weeks away, so the cars will be going out there and testing this week, I think. So Le Mans will be starting up here pretty soon, and that's always exciting, just knowing that race is around the bend. I'm Justin with NRN. Thank you so much for listening. I will see you next week. Take it easy.